Hi traders, absolutely amazing to have you here. Welcome to our YouTube channel, and I remain your host, my humble self, Overnight Billionaire. And today we're making a video for the traders that have reached out to us via the DMs, and they've said things like, oh, we placed a trade, put in our take profit and stop loss levels, and then the market was moving in profit until it wasn't. Right, so the market had probably given us 2 weeks to reward in profit, and then it reversed, came back to our entry and stopped us out. So over time we've engaged these traders, and then we've realized that one single reason this continues to happen is because certain traders, maybe a lot of traders, lack the knowledge of what seems to be the difference between internal structures and external structures. And if you're one of those traders, then I advise that you watch this video till the end, because we're going to be doing our very best to create clarity on that topic. Now, that being said, we're going to be using AUD card as a case study. One of the trades that we took this week that happens to just be a perfect fit for this internal and external structure problem that many traders face. So here we go. All right, then we're going to start from the monthly time frame. As you already know, top-down analysis, you have to work your way up from the higher time frames to the lower time frames. Try your best to build a directional bias. That's the one thing we're always doing on the higher time frames, nothing else, right? We're building directional bias because, of course, if you can identify directional bias on the higher time frames, it is easy, maybe easier, to just trade in the direction of the trend. It is, as they say, the trend is your friend. It is old, but it is gold, very golden. That thing is not going to get old. If the market stays here another 100 years, it is still going to remain true for another 100 years. So now let's jump into it. Now we'll go to the weekly time frame, and then what do we see? I like to focus on most recent price action, right? And then most recent price action, let's say we pick it from here, right? This zone here, highlighting with the X, we pick it from this zone here, right? This would mean that most recent price action is pretty much bearish. Why? We have this lower lows, this lower highs, this lower lows, this equal highs, and then this equal lows, slightly lower high, equal lows yet again, because of course you can see the market weak this low, seriously failing to close below this low with a candle body, right? Which of course tells you something, because you must understand that all the candles in the market are telling you a story. Do you understand? Your ability to become a profitable trader is also your ability to be a good storyteller or story interpreter. That is what it is. So now let us mark all of this out accordingly. So this would mean that we had a break of structure here to the downside. Now bear in mind, this is the monthly time frame, and as I told you, we're not doing much on this time frame other than establishing directional bias, right? That's what we're going to be doing on this time frame. So we had a break of structure here to the downside. The market did give us a break of structure and pulled back up, and we had the market struggle inside of all this supply zone, right? We can absolutely label that as a supply zone. They had the market pull into this zone here as a supply zone, struggle to break above as well. And then you can see that after we struggled with this zone, there was a meltdown, right? However that meltdown did not, right? Okay, it was a bit of my network. So supply zone here, put it in supply zone and the break of structure. This is just for context so that people can absolutely follow through. Now you'd find that there was, the creation of equal lows, as we would call it. The market failed to break below. Doesn't mean we've become bullish. Do you understand? Because market structure per external is still bearish, having given us lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, equal highs. We absolutely could still create a lower low, until that happens, or alternatively we break into new highs. We've not changed trend, right? So we're still bearish. Now this market then again pulled up, failing to create a new high, beating any of these highs, right? And then one would have thought, oh, since we've created a slightly lower high here, we'll create a lower low, right, to continue the downtrend. That also didn't happen. I extend this zone out, and you see that the market failed to close below this zone with a body close. Do you understand? If you wanted to be more generous, you could have picked this low, and then you still find that there was no body close. Now, this tells me something as far as resistance is concerned. If you embrace your very, very basic concepts, the ones that we all got introduced to as novice traders, the concept of support and resistance, you see that this is a 3-time resistance. 3 times the market has approached the zone, 3 times the market has failed to break it. That tells us something. Do you understand? That tells us something about the strength of that zone. Now, that being said, the one thing that I can pick out from the monthly time frame is that we're struggling with this low. Do you understand me? Still bearish overall, but struggling with this low. Now, external structure, bearish. Why? What do I mean by external structure? Swing highs here, swing lows here, swing highs. Sorry, I marked that out. Swing highs here, swing lows here, right? Equal highs here. Now, which means before we get a change of character to the upside, we need to see the market trade above this high. Anything happening inside of this zone becomes what? Internal. Now, of course, this is the monthly time frame as I earlier explained, so which means there's going to be a lot more refinement as we go down to the lower time frames, just so that we can find specific zones to take trades out of. Now we then go down to the weekly time frame next, from the monthly to the weekly. And then, I always tell my mentees this: more importantly, or most importantly, more than the zones that the market tests, what is most important is how the market tested these zones. So the market can absolutely test the zone, and we want to see that, of course. But what is also most important is how the market tests the zone. Now, having pulled back into this low, as we can see, this market started making what? Series of higher highs and higher lows, higher highs and higher lows and higher highs, which was good, right? Because it saw that, this was a beautiful support here. One would have thought this momentum would be sustained, but then it failed, right? Why? Because we ended up getting a change of character around this zone here. Do you understand? If we were marking out swing points, this would be higher high, this would be higher low, this would be higher high, this would be higher low, and then this would be another higher high. Now you can decide to plug in break of structures here, break of structures here, at will. Okay, let's do that, right? Let's do that because we can. Let's do because we can. So break of structure here, and then we plug in another break of structure here, right? So we can see that this was, now bear in mind, this was an internal bullish structure. Why? Because this external structure is bearish. Now I'm just trying to give you an insight as to what internal and external really means. Do you understand me? So when you begin to take internal trades, you must also make sure that you have internal targets. When you begin to take external trades, you must also ensure that you have external targets. That's the balance. Do you understand? The reason many people take trades and then it goes in profit and comes back is because they're taking internal trades and having external targets. And I'm going to show that to you in this video. Moving on, we could see that the market, absolutely gave us what seemed to be a market structure shift. At this point here, we had our market structure shift. Market became bearish once again. Now, how did we confirm the bearishness? We had gotten, this became the new point for the lower high, and then this was the lower low, this was the lower high, and then this was a lower low, of course, but we saw on the monthly time frame that this failed to close below the zone with a body. So on the weekly time frame, it shows as a reversal candle here, right? And then this is good. Now we can tell that we're bearish. Right now that we can tell that we're bearish, we also need to ask ourselves certain basic questions. Like, if we're bearish, there has to be a PY, one that the market is going to be reacting off of to continue this bearish wave, if at all it is going to continue the bearish wave, right? And then we look into all of this. I know some of you are already saying, there's this huge imbalance candle here that you see, but you can see, for clarity, we go down to the lower time frame to see how the market is also doing approaching that imbalance candle. Because as I mentioned earlier, more importantly than where the market is how the market got there, right? Because again, that tells us a story. Do you understand? Did the market get there by creating series of higher highs and higher lows, or lower highs and lower lows? That tells you a story. That tells you the current dominance in the market. Are we currently dominated by bears or bulls? Even in the short term or long term, you can tell from how the market approaches every zone, right? So we then pull into the daily time frame, and then what are we trying to understand? How the market pulled into this imbalance zone, right? Assuming that this imbalance zone was our POI, and then you can see that the market just continued pulling into the imbalance zone with very, very deliberate bullish candles. You can see them, very deliberate bullish candles. Now, of course, you cannot be jumping into a sell off an imbalance simply because it is an imbalance. Absolutely not. Not when you're seeing these very deliberate bullish candles, right? So you want to see what? You want to see a pause. You want to see a decrease in momentum, right? So I think we're going to eventually use the replay tool just so that we can capitalize on what seems to be most recent price action. So since we're back testing for this week, we're going to take out this week price action. Let's take out this week's price action, and then we're going to, the general assumption is that this week hasn't played out, and then we want to work our way through it. That's what we're going to do. So we then go to the daily time frame, as I said, and then one thing we can see for sure, bear in mind again, we're trying to trade the week that has just passed, right? But since we can use the replay tool, the assumption is that the week hasn't started, and then we're gearing up for what is to come. Now, I can absolutely see here that this market, approaches imbalance here, or this fair value gap, whatever it is you choose to call it. You can absolutely mark it out if you want, with very deliberate candles. Now, we'll probably be looking for some form of slowing down inside of this zone, but we didn't get any, right? Which means the market invalidated the imbalance. Now that the market has invalidated the imbalance, we're asking ourselves the question of what the next POI is, right? That's the next question we're asking ourselves. What is the next POI? Now, past the weekly time frame, not like this zone has any guarantee whatsoever to hold, but it is something to be watchful of. We can absolutely say, oh, there's some form of resistance inside of this zone, right? An actual possibility. Do you understand? Even though I don't personally think I expect this zone to hold, for certain personal reasons, sometimes you stay in the market long enough and then, you can see that, you can tell because you've seen certain things happen time and time again. It is not in my place to still predict a zone that is going to hold or the zone that's going to fail, right? We stay reactive more than we stay predictive. That is how we survive. Do you understand? Whatever lot size it is you use that you think is big still doesn't make a dent in the market. So it makes absolutely no sense to be assuming for people who absolutely move the market, right? So again, I'd say that since we feel the imbalance, and I've expected that we'll probably make it to this swing high here. Do you understand? Because this was the last swing high that created this swing low, right? So we'll probably be assuming that the market is going to make it to that swing high. That's going to be our general assumption, our general consensus. And then we go down to the daily time frame, as I said. Now, we're asking ourselves, how is this market pulling into that swing high? Of course, it's not hard to see, not even to the blind, that the market is pulling into that POI in a bullish manner. Do you understand? We can see this break of structure. We can see this break of structure as well. Right? I know I might be talking fast, but I'm happy you can absolutely download this video and watch it. We have to make sure that we don't keep the video too lengthy. That's the goal right now. Now, we've seen a lot of break of structures, and then for people who already have an understanding of inducements, we see this beautiful demand zone here that has not been tested. Do you understand me? Beautiful demand zone, beautiful demand zone that has not been tested. Not only has it not been tested, it also has this beautiful inducement as well. Right? Now, what would this mean for us? This would mean there's a possibility of the market coming into this zone. Do you understand? However, bear in mind, the market is still making bullish waves, higher highs, higher lows, higher highs. Do you understand? We're still making bullish waves. So let's step down to the lower time frame again, just to further expand the picture inside of that zone. I pick the 8-hour time frame, for example, and then as you can see, as I marked out earlier, the market is making swing highs. You can see a swing high point here. You can see a swing low point here. You can see a swing high point here. Right? So even though we expect the market to pull into what seems to be this, daily time frame demand zone, we can't deny the fact that we're still bullish. Now, why are we bullish? Because the moment the market created higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, this became our new swing high. And then this particular place that I had marked out, oh my bad, I think my network is lagging. Hopefully we're able to restore this soon. Now, as I was saying, so I'm taking you back to the 8-hour time frame. That was there's a bit of network issue there. Now you can see this is the swing high that we have, right? This particular place here was our swing high, most recently created high. And then this guy that we had marked out as inducement is also our swing low. Do you understand? So we're bullish inside of this structure. However that may, this is where I begin to show you what seems to be an internal structure. Now, on the 4-hour, not the 4-minute, 4-hour time frame, you can absolutely see that within this swing high and this swing low here that I have marked out as inducement of this daily time frame zone, we have the market do this, create lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows. Do you understand me? Now, this doesn't make this market bearish. It only just makes the internal structure of the market bearish. Now, what am I trying to say? Look at this guy. Higher high, higher low, higher high. Right? And then the market is probably coming to pull into a POI to continue this buys from. And then it pulls into the POI in a bearish manner, making lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, until we come into the POI and do this. Now, this can absolutely happen. The one mistake that you make is this. On the times when you try to sell this particular pullback, you're probably expecting the market to come back, and come into all of these regions, perhaps, or even you have this very certainty that it's going to come into here. Now you must ensure that when you trade internal structures, you have internal targets. Do you understand? Of course, the possibility exists that it would come into here, but some people can immediately start to think, oh, this particular bearishness means the market is going to continue making lower lows and lower highs until we probably come into one very extreme level of support, which is most likely not the case, because from the very jump, what you were trading was nothing but an internal structure. Do you understand me? So let's apply that logic into this particular trade, and then let's see how we can move. Now we can absolutely mark out this swing point, just for clarity and reference. We can mark out this internal swing point, right? I should use that word. So lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, right? And then you can mark out your break of structure. Here we had that clean break. We also had that clean break of structure here as well. So, and then in fact, beautifully so, it's easy to see maybe a supply zone here that market reacted from, that is absolutely causing all these sells. And the second time we have this beautiful fair value gap here that the market reacted from. I'm sure that if we had looked at this, we could have absolutely found a trade. Perhaps let's try. So let's go to the 15 minutes time frame to see if we can find a trade inside of that imbalance. Now what are we going to get exactly? Now you see this. Now I told you something earlier. I said more than how the market, where the market is, we look at how the market got there. Now the market got into or pulled into this imbalance by making this higher highs and higher lows and higher highs. Right, so I simply just waited for a change of character. I wanted to see this market behave out of the current bullishness that it is exhibiting, and that happened because I got my change of character here. Now I use this zone just for clarity, because I wanted to be sure that the market was intentional about that break, nothing else. You understand? You could have looked at this market more evidently and picked your change of character from somewhere else. That's fine. Now we saw this change of character, not just the change of character, we also saw this beautiful supply zone here, right? This beautiful supply zone here. Now what validated the supply zone here for me was this inducement. Do you understand me? We had that inducement there as well. Now seeing all of this happen, I could easily just capitalize on this, which in fact I sent out the members of the community. And if you're not on the community, kindly use the link in the bio to join our Telegram community. Trades are posted there for free, at entry with chart analysis and all of that. So we called this trade, with members of the community. We had our stop losses slightly above this high for like say 12 pips. Now the big question is, where was my target? This is the question of internal and external. Even though I had all of this lower time frame or higher time frame bias of pulling into this zone, I did not put my take profits here. Now what did I do alternatively? I came to put my take profits at this internal low. Do you understand me? This previous internal low, that was where my take profit was. Right, I didn't target all the higher time frame swing structure that I expected. Even though I expected the market to get there, I traded internal structures. Now you can see for yourself that the moment the market pulled into this particular low, the market reacted from it, right, made this pullback yet again, and then blast to the downside. Now we eventually took out this low, but we had already booked a 1 to 4, which was decent. Now because if you hadn't, it would take somebody with a strong emotional control, or a strong trading psychology to have held that trade through all this pullback and not ask himself or herself the question of, why didn't I just close? Do you understand me? Sometimes we want to try ourselves and hold trades, which is beautiful, but the market doesn't reward who holds trade. The market rewards who closes profit. So never really forget the goal. Never forget the reason you started trading. But even if you're going to hold trades, it's absolutely fine to book partial profits. At some point, make sure that the day's work is worth it. That's what's most important, right? So see how I targeted. I used internal structures. I got a trade, and then I also targeted internal structures. That is the difference between how I would have handled the trade and how you would have handled the trade. Do you understand? Now the market eventually continued all of this pullback. As you can see, the market made another discount again, and then pulled back up into what seems to be another POI. I think this could probably look like a supply zone here, but that aside, and then let's see what happens eventually. And then boom, now we can see that the market has now tested a higher time frame demand zone here. We've eventually tested a higher time frame demand zone here, right? Now for sure we can absolutely have the market still pull into it and test it properly before making that push up. We can also have the market change character here and then begin to look for a buy trade. And what's most important is that we identify that all this bearish wave that was made, this lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, were all internal structures. Do you understand me? They were all internal structures of this overall, external bullish structure. So this was an internal bearish structure of this overall bullish structure. So if I decide to take a bullish, if I decide to take a buy from here now, for example, I can absolutely be targeting this swing high for first take profit, and maybe a break of the swing high for second take profit. Why? Because I am now trading the external structure. So even if the market eventually reacts to any of these, I know the reaction is just going to be short-lived for more push to the upside. So maybe the reactions are just going to be my cue to add more positions for one single reason, because I already know what the higher time frame bias is, and I know what the internal and the external structure is. Do you understand me? So first of all, your ability to validate your trades. You validate your trades. If you're trading an internal structure or an internal structure, can be an absolute game changer for anybody. An absolute game changer. So this, happened during the week, and then I thought to share with our trading community here on YouTube as we grow. It would be amazing for you to give us a like and follow. You can see the market has further come back to probe this zone, and this is where we closed for the week. So it is possible to begin to watch out for, a market structure shift yet again from the bearish side to the bullish side to confirm that this zone is, going to hold. And then we can begin to target all the swing high for higher time frame targets. Now, I don't know how you trade, whatever entry reason you use, you can close your profits along the way, or if you have patience on steroids, you can hold your positions till this swing high. But there's a high certainty that we would get to that swing high. Why? Because of the higher time frame trend, which is already bullish, making these higher highs and higher lows, higher highs. We've put into the zone that had this inducement, we can absolutely go back into this high. Right? Happens more often than not. So I just made this video to clarify between internal structures and external structures. So every time you decide to take a trade, ask yourself the basic question of if you're trading an internal structure and external structure, because this is going to inform where you're going to have your stop loss set and where you're going to have your take profit set, so that you don't expect more than the market is willing to give per time. And then that being said, I really hope that you were able to gain a thing or two from this video. Thank you all so much for watching to the end. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you gained something from this video. Also, you can use the link in the description to join our community. It would be amazing to see you there. Let's take trades together, and then let's make this market as much as we can. Thank you guys so much. See you on the next one. Bye bye.